This is Sean with Bob Solomon Stories, and I have a woman that is going to be describing her 12-year relationship with Bob Solomon, and this is Tracy. Thomas, Tracy, how you doing?
Pretty good. How you doing?
All right, so where are you located currently?
In Carmel, Indiana?
Carmel, Indiana.
Yep.
And that's not where you met Bob. You met Bob in Pittsburgh, is that right?
Yeah,
At a
right.
game, or where were you guys exactly?
So I was in Pittsburgh for a bachelorette party, and he was in Pittsburgh for a football game, a Steelers game. And we met on September 27th, 1998. And so basically, we met at a bar because it was, a bachelorette party. And we decided to find a good looking guy to do shots with. And I spied Bob.
Was it do shots with or do shots off of?
Well, it may be off sub. I was trying to be, a little bit more demure. Anyway, so of course I picked Bob out and for the bride to take a shot off. Well, then I did it, and we all did it. So, he was a willing participant. But he was with John Sherburne and Bruce something. I can't remember I think his name is Bruce. But so, we exchanged emails, and then, nothing happened after that.
Did he sit down with you at the bar? Did you guys talk for a little bit during the game?
You know what? I think we just stood and talked. And he was interesting, but I had my mind on other things, like the bachelorette party, and we have other bars to go to. But at least I don't remember the exact conversation, but we exchanged emails.
So how long was it before you guys actually saw each other next? Until you actually were able to go on your first date or see each other in your city or his city?
Yeah. Well, no, actually, we met. So that was 1998. I met him for New Year's at 1998 to 1999, but it was in Chicago. And I don't know if I can say this, but I drove up to Chicago. He flew in with John Sherburne and Diana Sherburne. And I think Sean was there too. But so when I drove up to the hotel, he said, just give me a call and I'll tell you the room number. Well, he wasn't, I called him again. I was like, okay, I'm getting upset. So I tried to ask the reception what room he was in. He wasn't right a certain room. It's like, wait a second. He told me he was going to be here. It's like, wait a second. Is this guy just standing me up and just, having me drive 3 hours for nothing? Well, I asked the reception. I'm like, okay, I know the guy's name is John. Do you have 2 rooms under name of John? And I think it was S. That's all I knew about. And they found the room and they called the room. And so he came down for me. So I thought he was a bit better than, or, I knew he was okay then. And then our second date was in Chicago too. And it was, I drove up there to go shopping with my mother, like 2 or 3 months later. So he met my mother. And it was just, he was there with Sean and John again, Sean McConey and John Sherburne again. And I can't remember what restaurant we were at, but so he was willing to meet my mom. He thought, you know, it would be to get on her good side. And so he thought, you know, they were having a great conversation, and he thought she asked him his age, which she didn't do. I don't know what question she asked, but he said how old, you know, she thought she asked how old he was, and he went, how old am I? Because at the time I thought he was 10 years older, and I did not find out he was 12 years older until like when we got married.
That's hilarious. So let's bounce over to sailing. So when was the first time he introduced you to sailing and took it in Nantucket? I know this is one of the shots there of you guys up in the Northeast.
Yes. So the boat, us standing by the boat is actually at the Indianapolis Sailing Club. The top corner is my first Fagawi. And that was the first time I had been sailing. I'd never stepped a foot on a sailboat, nothing. And he brought me sailing. And we did the Fagawi race. And I mean, it was trial by fire. But let me just say that. I'm not going to go into the the whole scenario, because I would be talking for like 20 minutes. But just say that it was a comedic and dangerous adventure at the same time. Well, I at least thought it was dangerous.
Did anything go wrong? Like in kind of a short format as far as in the story?
So when we started sailing over to from like Barnstable over to the Hyannis port, the top halyard broke. So, you know, we could only motor from use the engine and the head sail. Okay, fine. When we went into the harbor, we basically got stuck in reverse. And just because when we're going to more, and then the pilot, or you know, the guy that was captaining, that was not Bob. He was like trying to stop it like a motorboat, but it was a sailboat, and it was in the mooring. And we ended up going backwards through all the boats. And it's, you know, was a rudder boat. So, you know, a boat that had a rudder. So it was just hair raising. Well, at least it was hair raising for me. But, you know, they got it fine. But they were trying not to hit Kennedy's boat. Another mishap, or the final one, well, like Bob, because to fix the halyard, they had to pull him up on the mast, and that was comedic. And then when we finally started the race, about, you know, 10 minutes, the mainstay broke. And so we ended up motoring and using the, we did not use the head sail then, because, you know, the mainstay broke. So we ended up just dead breaking it to Nantucket.
All right, so I'm going to bring up this next shot here. You said this was at a wedding you guys were at in 99. Is that right?
I think, yeah, it's 99 or 2000. I thought he looked so handsome.
Speaking of, did you have blonde hair then, or is that still the red you've got going on? Because it looks a little blonde.
Well, I had chemotherapy, so
Uh-huh.
this is what my hair came back as.
Okay.
But but yeah, this is I used to be that color.
Well, this one's kind of a cool shot. This is you guys in southern Indiana,
Right.
relaxing, looking over the hills. But why don't you tell the stories about Bob with fireworks on the 4th, and also about the banner and the police?
Oh my God. Okay. Basically, when when we did the fireworks, it was uh in front of our townhome, and we were part of a group of townhomes that just had there was like a one-way road and through it, and there was no throughway. So so
And where was this?
in Indian in Carmel, in
Okay.
Carmel. And so he did like he was using the those lanterns that you can get to fly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so he would like those and then try to shoot them down with another firework, a bottle rocket. And so my neighbor said, "Are you is he well insured?" And I go, "Well, I don't know why." She goes, "Well, if he in case he gets blown up, can you adopt me?" Because she thought, I would be really wealthy. But then the other times, um, it was like total Armageddon. The first time they shot off rockets, a couple of the guys in the neighborhood bought them. Well, then they realized that the next year, um, Bob and like three other neighbors bought all these fireworks that were closed out the year before. So they had a ton and ton of fireworks. We had French doors that looked over a balcony, but it was like barely 6 feet off the ground. And I was looking at the balcony, looking at those front doors, and I hear bang, Bob running by the window, then all the smoke. Well, apparently he had one of those round mortars, and he was throwing them instead of shooting them off. Well, it landed under a car. So he started running, and that's why, he's thought, oh, the car is going to blow up. Well, it didn't, but, there was a lot of green smoke. Or that night, just, I call it Armageddon because they were shooting fireworks everywhere, and just not like one little pop. And it was after the main fireworks, and it was just everything going off at the same time, people shooting at each other. When we were getting ready for the 4th of July, I forgot to say this, mentioning this, that Bob went upstairs. Well, a police officer knocked on our door, and um, I answered it, and he was asking about uh, the there was I complained that they should block off our street because it wasn't an exit. It was like a horseshoe. So people were driving down the street and it basically coming out the same way. And it was like 100 yards. But so the police officers were directing them to our unit. Well, a police officer showed up because, he wanted to ask what my thoughts were before the actual fireworks. So I was telling him, you know, for some reason I didn't invite him in. He was just standing at the door. Well, Bob at the time, he decides to, those flags and stuff that you put on the boat. So he decides at that time to open up our window and throw those flags out. You know those strings of little flags, and then the major flag at the he put on the end.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what he threw out the window because he was holding one end and threw the other end out the window because he wanted to fix it like a sailboat. Well, it landed on top of the police officer. I mean, the police officer got pissed. And I looked at him and I just went, my husband's an idiot. It's like, he didn't look before he flew it. So
I'm assuming he didn't get in trouble by the cop.
No, because when the officer looked at me, and I mean, he thought he threw it at him and it covered him. I mean, it hit him in the head. And I just said, you know what? My husband is an idiot. Leave it at that. And, he took my word for it. So no, he didn't get in trouble.
All right, so let's talk about your husband on top of a horse. I know you were big into the equestrian world. So what was it like getting Bob acquainted with the horses? And what were the names of the horses that Bob was on and that you guys rode?
Well, he's on Bud. So Bob and Bud. And I was riding George at that time. So he's on that horse. It was the first time he rode. And basically, he was not patient enough to learn how to ride. He just wanted to go out and ride. So it's like, okay, since we are going at a walk, that's fine, because that horse couldn't see out of one eye and was blind in the other, basically. So, but it's like, okay, we're going to walk. Well, Bob, we were walking for a while, and then Bob got impatient and he trotted the horse. And it's like, okay, well, then he got nervous, and he did what any novice rider would do. He was squeezing with his legs because he had to trust his rider that he said, okay, he was starting to canter. Well, Bob was directing him towards the barn. And I'm like, Bob, he's blind, turn. He ignored me. From the barn, because he can't see. So, he did turn. I elected to ride in the open field after that. So, and Bob found a body of water and, had me to take a picture of him by the body of water. So he's always pictured near water.
Yeah, and that other picture in the slide there,
right?
Is that in Nantucket, or what's that behind him? This is a beautiful shot of you and Bob all dressed up, getting married, and then enjoying the honeymoon in Hawaii.
Right.
And you guys bounced around to a few islands. Did you do like a little cruise or something?
Yeah, we went to about 4 islands at Honolulu. We rented a convertible and drove all the way around that island. Mom and I met an older couple, like in their 80s, on our cruise. Well, he had died, but what was her name? I just remembered it. Anyway, he had been in the military. So she got us on the base and was taking us along in there, which Bob just loved. And he just loved anything military.
I want to remind you, you had mentioned also at the wedding, if you want to kind of allude into it, about Bob's toast to the bachelor party. You had a video that we were going to cut into it.
Yes. Well, this wasn't, it wasn't the wedding. It was the rehearsal dinner.
Yeah.
And basically, when Bob demonstrates anything, he would go, okay, look at this. I'm going to look at this. Well, he basically did lighters, but he thought it was so funny because they were stainless steel. At that time, no one knew what it was because you had to press two things and two buttons, and then it would light up. But the guys, we didn't know what it was. So he gave those out to everyone. I gave specific gifts to, all my bridesmaids. I was talking a lot and he was like, he did it like I spoke about for 20 minutes. He did his demonstration and stuff in about 3 minutes.
Tomorrow, so Jaden, I got your food.
Why do I feel like Ronald Reagan just finished and I'm Michael Dukakis wrote? She got an orphan bag. This is a gift that's never been given here. That kind of thing. So this is something that nobody's ever seen because I took that magazine, I had those little standard, Kurt Bob, So this is the gift, and I got not just for the Grooms guys, but all my buddies. Okay, this is the device. The device has a little thing that says Tracy Bob 26, 2004. So you can see that. And what you do is you press your finger in.
The wrong date, Bob.
Just get ready to close it up. This is for your house. What does it do? What it is. First thing, it's a private one. I was telling you. Everybody's going to love this. You press your finger down like that, you take your thumb and you push up. One for all of us, Bob. Boy, that's short and sweet. I don't think it's Charles story earlier. It's a guy thing. Okay. He's the most mellowest one of the brothers. He's the craziest, not me. Dan wanted to play with matches. So where he decided to play with matches, underneath my parents' king-size bed.
So he said, after I was speaking, he said, I feel like she was Ronald Reagan and I was Mondale. There was, I think we're on Maui, and we rented another convertible, and there was like a cove that people used to go to on the other side of the island, and you would have to walk down like a really steep hill to get to the cove. Like it was like about 100 feet down, but it was wooded. It was like a forest. So we parked the convertible and went down. When we came back, we couldn't get it to reverse because the back tires were on the pavement and the front tires were like in a sandy soil. Well, it was a front wheel drive, so it couldn't back up. So Bob went, okay, let me sit on the trunk and you rock it back and forth just to see if it'll go. When it would go forward a little bit, it's like, we're not too far from the hill down. So I was actually terrified that I was going to like land the cars in the trees. But we eventually got the car out. He was just sitting on the hood, or sitting on the trunk, like no big deal. I was the one sweating it.
That's funny. All right, so let's chat a little bit about Bob's friends and somewhat about his family too. So like in this picture, it's Patty
And Sean.
and Sean. And so, just kind of describe a little bit about them and then also a little bit about Bob's family.
Okay. Well, first of all, that picture with the beer on his head, he did that every time that he had opportunity, especially at the Fagawi. So not the prettiest picture of him, but I thought it was funny. But Bob, in general, he just is like everyone's friend and has a great sense of humor. And he's like gregarious. And so he just, you see how they're all laughing. He was so entertaining and he just was always doing a crazy, crazy stuff that, looks mild to, what he usually does. But it's always innocent, he's funny. But yeah, they all love him.
And then what about his family? Would you talk about his family a little bit?
So his family, I met them for the first time in Washington, D.C. And it was when his father was alive, and his father was a congressman. That was the first time we met each other. And I flew down to Washington, D.C. by myself because he at that time was still living in Massachusetts too. So I flew down, I met his family. His mother and father were so pleasant. His mother is pleasant. His father was gregarious, like, Bob was. And then I think just Linda was there. And then his two brothers. I think Susan was not there, but I got along with them well. I think they were so funny, and intelligence ran through all that family. Intelligently funny.
So let's talk about this little group you had here. I believe this was for GW's inauguration in DC.
Yes. So the group of us, it's me and Bob. I'm next to John Sherburne. Then it was behind him is Paul Pedrote. And then in front of him was Sean Mahoney. And then the guy in the back was Ed Connolly. And the woman in front, I don't know her last name. She was either married to Fred Sleva, which is he's behind her, or Paul. I think she was married to Fred. That was before we went to the actual inauguration, which was the next day. That was a rooftop looking over Washington, D.C. The picture on the left, that was actually before the inauguration, like 2 days before. And Bob wanted his picture, the Capitol and behind him. And I think he's showing off a button, and I think it was about George Bush.
That is a very patriotic picture there, and he you know, obviously it was after you guys were together, but he ran a lot of veteran events to be able to help a lot of veterans get donations and be honored, ones that were gone, and helping families and everything. I know that was a big thing and I was able to go on the Fagawi, and he took me to interview the Wounded Warriors and Navy SEALs on the boat as we're flying across the ocean. That was pretty crazy. But let's talk about living with Bob a little bit. So what was it like living with Bob?
Well, he kept me on my toes, to say the least. He was entertaining. Like, he was so high energy. He was at least being high energetic, or he was asleep. Nothing in between. So, you know, it was just a pleasant to live with. But, you know, like, for example, too, I mean, this is not the greatest story, but I just think it was so funny because I would cook food before I went up to the barn, and like the whole plate of like ribs and the country ribs. And I would tell him when I was driving back, I said, oh, there's, you know, a plate of food, ribs for dinner. Okay. And I remembered to call him back because it's like, he's gonna eat all of them. I literally called him 2 minutes, and he said, I already ate all of them. And it's like, really? So, that's what I thought was entertaining. But, you know, he was just, living with him was, I mean, especially, well, he was gregarious and dynamic and stuff, but he also had quiet moments, basically when he was watching football. And unless it was the Steelers, and then basically I made him leave and go to a bar or something because he yelled so loudly and stuff. He would cheer. So it's like, you know what? You can go watch that somewhere else. But he had his quiet moments, and just, he was low key, and okay, we would cuddle and stuff. And he was just very intelligent. I mean, he just was re-engineering everything. You know, he's like, okay, no, we do A, but then why don't we do B? And then he would research how to do B when the electricity would go out. Because, you know, he was an engineer in, like, basically he worked for Hoosier Energy, and he was started out as an engineer, and then he went through the ranks to be like second in the command for Hoosier Energy. Lights would go out, so he would go find which light pole it was at, or electrical pole it went to, and what caused it. So, like, one time he found that a squirrel shorted out the electricity, so he called the company, told them which pole it was. I mean, he looked at the numbers, called them up, said, you know, the electricity is out, and this is the pole number it was at.
The bottom line is he was a very ingenuitive and loving guy. What else would you like to kind of say in general, and also in closing, to just kind of sum up your time with Bob and how he affects the people of the world that you're around, you know, through all those travels and experiences?
I have so much to describe of him that I can't narrow it down to just a couple words. You know, what made me get married to him was his giving personality and his sense of humor. Oh my God, he was so funny. But he was generous, intelligent, and could take a joke. You know, it was fun. It was, you know, at a time, it was just fun living with him. And that was before we got divorced before he started all the charities for veterans. And I mean, he was just so giving. I mean, that was the one thing. He was just a really giving guy.
Is there anything else you'd like to say to the family directly?
The world was a better place with him in it. And, you know, I that's all I can say. I mean, that's all I can describe. That's all I will say about it, because I'm thankful that his mother and father got together, because there would be no Bob in this world if they didn't get together. They know how he was, and I concur with, you know, what they knew. I mean, they just loved him to death.
Well, Tracy, I really appreciate the stories. I know the family is going to love all the fun references and, you know, all the great moments that you guys had. I know that they were a part of that journey with you too. And I think that, you know, it's hard being able to talk about somebody, let alone somebody you're married to and together for so many years. But you were lucky enough to be able to experience Bob in a lot of crazy ways that nobody else was.
That's true.
All right. So listen, I thank you very much for sharing, for Bob Solomon Stories and for the family. And just stay on the line, and I'm going to close this one out. Okay.
Okay.